Welcome to Unlocking Childhood, coffee and conversations with early childhood experts and real-life parents to explore the importance of quality early childhood care from birth to 5 years of age.
We will cover topics such as sleep, nutrition, emotional and behavioral regulation, the importance of play, and the well-being of parents.
We are your hosts, Kelsey Moeller, Human Development and Family Science Extension Specialist.
And I'm Germán Posada, professor at the Department of Human Development and Family Science at Purdue University.
Welcome back, everyone, for another episode of Unlocking Childhood. We have been talking a lot about how parents deal with their young children's sleep, nutrition, emotional and behavioral management, and play. As important as it is to focus on the child's well-being, we also find it very important that we pay attention to the parent's well-being. So today, our conversation will be about that. The need to consider mothers, fathers, caregivers' well-being for them to be able to take good care of their children and themselves. So today we are joined by Dr. Valerie Knopik, professor and department head in Human Development and Family Science here at Purdue University. And we also have a mother of 4 children, Jordan Schoen, with us as well. So thank you both for joining, and let's dive into the conversation.
Yeah, I would like to ask Jordan, our parent guest today, to introduce herself and tell us how many kids you have. And let's just get started with that.
Yeah. As I said, my name is Jordan, and I am a nurse by trade. I stay at home with my 4 kids now, married to my husband, Taylor, who is a local to the Purdue area. And I'm from Indianapolis, moved here about 10 years ago when we got married, and we have 4 kids, ages a boy who's 8, 2 girls in the middle that are 6.5 and almost 4, and then a 1-year-old little boy.
Perfect. And Valerie, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what you do, and just start the conversation whenever you're ready?
Sure. Thank you. So I am currently the department head of Human Development and Family Science here at Purdue. My research tends to focus on disentangling genetic and environmental influences on child disruptive behavior and substance use, and I'm particularly interested in the prenatal environment and the early postnatal environment. Probably appropriate to this particular conversation as well. I have considerable training in kind of yoga and mindfulness. And I lead trainings around the world as well. And so I imagine that some of that training and that experience will also inform some of our conversations today.
Yeah. So Jordan, when you think of parents' well-being, what are some things? You have 4 children that can probably be challenging or overwhelming at times. So when parents' well-being comes up, what do you think of? Like, what does that bring up in your mind of importance?
Yeah. For me, I don't think in motherhood, anyone is asking us to be a martyr. And I don't think our husbands want that from us. I don't think our kids want that from us. I don't think that's healthy at all. But I also don't always agree with, you can't pour from an empty cup, which while there is a lot of truth in that, I do think part of motherhood is requiring you to pour from an empty cup, at least in certain seasons. I have very much found that to be true, specifically postpartum, newborns, sickness. I find myself pouring from an empty cup a lot. And, God willing, those seasons are just seasons and they don't last forever. And, I do find it important to carve out times where I can take care of myself, and a lot of that looks like waking up before my kids when I can. I, spend time in quiet, reading, in prayer, talking with my husband. I get a shower. I brush my teeth, do the basic human needs, because when I'm met with my children's needs right upon waking, they're just not met with as much grace and patience as when I'm, I've met my basic needs first. And, there are seasons where that can't happen. And, I think that's okay to have seasons like that, but that they can't last forever. And you do need to find times where you're taking care of yourself and doing what you can. And the quality of that, those breaks that you get, I think are important too. How are you spending those breaks that you get? If you get both your kids down for naps at the same time, are you spending that time browsing social media, binge watching a show? I think at the end of that break or that me time, you're not really going to feel restored, at least like you think you are. I think if you spend that time getting a workout in, going for a walk outside, getting fresh air, having a good conversation with a friend, I think you leave that time feeling more restored. Yeah. So quality of that time is important. Yeah.
What do you think, Valerie? Anything pop up on all of what Jordan was saying was a lot of information, good information, and
great information.
Yeah.
And in many ways sounds like you're trying to carve out time and experiences that do work towards restoration for yourself. I did neglect to mention I do have 2 children, and I'm now in empty nest mode. So, which is a whole other aspect of life. But I do have very keen and strong memories of when our children were small. And we didn't live in Indiana at the time. We lived in another part of the country, and my husband had an hour-long commute to work. And so he was up and out of the house by 5:30 because it was a drive into the Boston area. And so there was horrible traffic. And so I was responsible for virtually all aspects of the child wrangling in the morning and getting to from school, also juggling a full-time job. So all this to say is that even though I'm in a different phase of my life, a different season of my life, I do have some experiences to draw on, and I recognize the challenges, and I can relate to all of the things that you just said in terms of getting your own needs met first. Even the most basic of needs can make such a world of difference on like the landscape of your day. And I think that is also what it is all about, is trying to find what restores you. And that's different for everybody. I have a friend who feels, she says she feels restored after binge watching shows or doing scrolling on social media. And that might be true for her, but that isn't true for me. And it might not be true for others. So I think trying to really figure out what it is that can hit that reset button, particularly in bite-sized moments. I think often we think we need to do it all. We need to have 30 to 45 minutes or maybe an hour to work out in the morning or whatever time of day works. We need to eat right. We need to get enough sleep. We need to meditate or pray or whatever, that kind of silent time, reflection time, devotion time. We need to spend time with our families. We need to spend time with our friends. We need to do all of these things in order to refill our cup. And it might not be that we get our cup completely full, but just enough so that we can give back. And we simply can't do it all. Because I tried so hard to do it all at a certain point in my life that I made myself sick. I developed an autoimmune disorder because I was trying to juggle so much. And so I'm also speaking from that place of it's just impossible to do it all. And so trying to find small things that can add up, that you can stack on top of each other, or maybe just do in and of themselves, that can hit a reset button in a way that is meaningful, I think is really important to figure out. And those things differ for everybody.
Yeah. I just think just the conversation makes me think of 2 things. I have a question for Jordan. It has to do in your experience, what issues in your experience, you have 4 kids, can be an obstacle, a barrier to your ability to what you think is good quality of care for your kids. And this is, you have 4, so I don't know how you juggle all those, just dealing with 4 kids. So could you please speak to that? And the other issue that I have listening to Valerie and to you is just sometimes it's basically impossible to just do it all on your own. Mm-hmm. So if you could, talk about how you handle these things also with your spouse or with your spouse. You said that you were married, yeah. So if you could talk to those 2 issues, Jordan.
Yeah. Well, I think it can be common or typical of us women to assume our husbands know what we need or are thinking without actually verbally communicating them. So, I find a lot of that morning hustle bustle falls on my shoulders too. I do stay at home, so I'm not rushing off to a job. And so I'm okay taking on that responsibility of getting the kids ready for school and eaten and out the door. But there are mornings like this morning when, I have somewhere I also need to be early and I can't look like I rolled out of bed where, I need to communicate with him when we wake up, like, hey, I need your help with the kids this morning. I'm going to need your help with the kids tomorrow. And, when I communicate those things to him and don't just expect things to happen or him to know, assuming it just never works out well with men and women, I find. But, you asked about barriers of care. I think a lot of the barriers we have to quality of care and being able to take care of ourselves fall along not having a good community. I have a really great group of friends and mothers who are in the same season of me, and we share babysitters. We are involved in a book club and in life groups, and it's a healthy community. I think a lot of people have this false sense of community from social media, and it's almost like a misery loves company type venting and affirming of motherhood, and it's not always healthy. I think there's a difference between, venting and complaining about your kids and, seeking out people for encouragement or advice and your purpose of that is gleaning encouragement and not just like, woe is me, my kids are driving me crazy, I need to vent. Because I feel like you leave those conversations and you're almost more irritated at your next interaction with your kids rather than, maybe having a renewed perspective or a renewed outlook. And, having mothers that have gone before you and maybe have older kids can give you a perspective that you sometimes lack when you're in those, those young little years.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I also, I think it's also worthwhile to try. It's not always possible, but to try to practice. I think practice is a really good word. Practice being really present in the moments with your children as well, because those are moments you're never going to get back. They're fleeting. They're fast. It may not feel like it in the moment, but finding a moment of gratitude and presence for the day that you have been given, the moment you have been given, even if your child is having a temper tantrum on the floor, you have this gift of a child, and you were given another day. You woke up this morning, and I think those gratitude practices have a lot of research to support how important they can be in creating just a sense of like restoration and reflection in ourselves and finding gratitude, not always for the things that are really obviously wonderful in our lives, but also some of the things that are hard, that we get to do this today. We get to work through this, and we will get to the other side, I think is also important. Instead of just, the reason why I brought that up is because you were talking about Jordan having kind of the community where you are all complaining about something,
Sure.
and you leave those conversations feeling potentially more fried or frustrated with your current situation. And so having those opportunities to shift your cognitive thinking about something, to have that reshift or that reframing of the moment of, I get to do this today.
Right. It's a perspective.
It is a
you know,
perspective.
My kids are either the joy of my life or the frustration and burden of my life. And whatever way I choose to see the situation or what lens I'm looking through on that is totally going to change everything, you know.
Yeah, it literally can change how you feel inside.
Yeah.
It can change how your nervous system is reacting to the situation. And that's not to say that you aren't going to have moments of frustration. It's not all going to be roses and, you know, beautiful moments. There are those thorns as well that we have to manage and deal with as parents. But we actually get to do that.
Yeah. And I think it's very important, sorry to interrupt you, but I think it's very important, Valerie and Jordan and Kelsey, to accept that there are those moments of frustration, of not feeling very good, of maybe you're not very happy with the way you interacted with your child, you know, but it's part of the journey. And sometimes, as you said, Jordan, at the beginning, you know, your cup is empty and you deal with the situation the best you can. And sometimes, yes, we make what we think at that point is a mistake, but there is another day, and there is, and then you could. I don't want to say make up, because it's not making up. You could restore yourself, and you could just behave in ways that you would prefer to do that. So all the point that I'm trying to make here is that we shouldn't be thinking of parents as being perfect all the time. And you were talking about being a martyr. No, it's just like sometimes we need to accept there are difficult moments, there are frustrating moments, and but there are also opportunities to come back and do things a little bit differently if you take care of yourself and try to reflect upon what's making you feel not very good about the interaction with your child.
And I think, you know, modeling forgiveness and asking for forgiveness from your kids is one of the best lessons that you can teach them. I mean, none of us are perfect, like you said. We all fall short daily. But if we can come to our kids and humble ourselves, even as the adult, and just say, you know, hey, mommy really messed up today. I had a bad attitude. The way I responded to you, the way I spoke to you was wrong. You know, will you forgive me? And like what you're teaching your kids is like even mom or dad can, you know, mess up. They can fix it. And, you know, your kids just soften, and they're a lot more likely, I think, to apologize when they've messed up, because, you know, if mom and dad can do it, then so can they.
Yeah.
And that's come up in a lot of our previous episodes as well, you know, that modeling, and when they see you taking care of your well-being too, that is going to make impacts later on for them. You know, the visual that I have is when I'm working out and my son sees me doing that and wants to do it with me, I feel like that's making impressions, you know. So when you're, like you said, Jordan, apologizing or doing those things, it's also going to impact them way beyond even that moment, for sure.
Exactly. I was going to say the exact same thing, Kelsey. I think that, and it might not happen for years. My children are now in their 20s, and moments come up where I notice where something that either my husband, their father, has done or I have done routinely over the course of our lives as we were raising them now shows up. Now they are also trying to do as well, work it into their daily life. And
so encouraging.
It is because especially when you're in the thick of it and you think, you know, you have no idea who these individuals are going to grow up to become.
You can't see the fruit yet. Right.
That's right. And, but they take in everything, the way you communicate with them, the way you take care of yourself. If you're able to hit a reset button by, you know, stepping out of the room for 5 minutes and enjoying a cup of tea or whatever it might be, those habits that you are building in yourself to create more well-being and taking care of your own self, it inevitably they notice, and it will rub off on them in different ways.
Yeah.
And impact them in different ways.
Yeah, I'm all with you, Valerie and Jordan. It's just the power of observation and learning. They're watching all the time, even if not consciously, but they're taking in so much information, and then later on, sorry, I see it in my kids, just how they from the way, I mean, simple things, the way they walk, the way they exercise, the way they handle emotions, the way they handle their sleep, their nutrition, the things that they eat. You know, I'm surprised to see how much of that reflects what you did with them as they were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's encouraging.
Yes.
Ditto.
Yeah.
Jordan, I want to go back. You were talking about community, and some of us have that maybe through family or friends. But what would be your advice to a parent or a mom or father that doesn't have family close by? They're not involved in very many activities, and they probably do feel a sense of loneliness, maybe is the right word, I don't know. But what would be your advice to them to find that community that you were speaking to?
Yeah, I think there's community everywhere. No matter if you're in a small town or a big city, you just have to know where to look. I think every city and town has a mom's timeout groups. I was involved in that because, I'm not from here, so I didn't come with a community. I had to seek it out and find it myself. And I found that at church. I found that through a mom's timeout group at a different location. Mm-hmm. And, one of the great things, we're kind of harping on social media, but one of the good things is there's so many groups now. And there's interest groups. I'm part of all these naturally minded moms of West Lafayette or Tippecanoe County. And, something, whether it's a type of workout you do or, or faith or your, whatever your degree is in, there's so many different groups. And I think I have found so much community in different groups, and I think if it doesn't come naturally to you, there's ways to seek it out, and there's people looking for community everywhere. You just have to know where to look, and I think Facebook groups and community groups like that and Moms Times Outs are great for people who need to create it themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was thinking too, libraries always usually have those. Yeah. Story times or different book clubs and activities that are for families. So those are good options too that don't cost anything and are accessible.
Yeah. I had all those same notes that I wanted to bring up as well. So, and then I also think that as your children age into different experiences, whether that's pre-K or school, that opens up a whole other avenue for creating community with parents or caregivers at, drop off, at pickup. And that is, with my situation, when my children were younger, that was a lifesaver for me because my husband was an hour away. And as I mentioned, I was working full time and also needed to be the person to pick up both of them. They were at different schools at one point in time. And as I was preparing for this podcast, I was reflecting on just that group of moms that I managed to stand next to day after day at pickup or drop off, and created, had little conversations that turned into larger conversations that really turned into a community of parents and caregivers that I could rely on in a pinch, or, that we would get together for dinners also without our children at times. And so it is, like you said, Jordan, often we need to seek it out. Sometimes it doesn't happen naturally, but community does exist everywhere. I do believe that as well. And whether that's in person or virtually, I do think that there is the opportunity to find community, but often it does take a little bit of effort. It might not happen. You might not be in a natural setting where I think about college, where we're all in a classroom and you meet people very naturally. When as you get older, those those natural opportunities don't always present themselves.
And especially when there are young kids that are taking up a lot of your time and the daily task of changing diapers, feeding them, putting them to bed, all of these things don't leave much time for you to look for community. So as Valerie was saying at the very beginning, I think that for each person it works differently, but there are ways to connect with other people, and those groups of mothers or fathers, parents, I would say, become very important, and is what really, in many cases, the door to meet people and to create that community that you were talking about, Jordan, or that we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We were talking about earlier about, that feeling, sense of overwhelm or exhaustion. But we didn't really talk about how, when you do feel that way, how does that affect how you care for your child? So just thinking on that, I know I wasn't always my best self if I was overwhelmed or exhausted. So how can we better take care of them, even in those moments that aren't great for us, but still be doing a good job?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think overwhelm is just a part of motherhood. And it's just, I think it takes intentionality every day to be in control of your emotions and to not let them rule and control you. And I think that's one of the most important things that we can model for our kids. I can't remember the book right now, but I was reading a book one time that was talking about parenting styles in different countries. And something that always stuck with me was how they talked about when parents, flew off the handle or lost their temper, that it was viewed by this culture as immaturity and lack of maturity from the adult. And it was almost like a shameful, embarrassing thing for them. And I was like, that kind of always stuck with me. It's like, okay, I'm the parent. Like, if I need to step out for a minute to collect myself, because you're going to get angry, you're going to get frustrated, you're going to get overwhelmed and want to just, word vomit all over your family sometimes. But can you show your kids that you can think clearly even when you are upset? Can you take a second to collect yourself and come back? Because a quote that's always stuck with me is, they say, an escalated parent can never de-escalate an escalated child. And it's like, okay, yeah, you're right. Me yelling isn't helping them calm down at all. So if I need them to calm down and be in control of their emotions, I need to model that first.
Yeah. And you just said model, which I was hoping you were going to get around to, because when you model that type of behavior, it helps your child. I had a child who did have some anger management issues for a stretch, I was remembering as you were talking, Jordan, some of the tools that we were trying to use with them to help them regulate their emotions when they would get very upset about something. Mm-hmm. And it often felt, the things that they would get upset about often felt really small, like they lost a video game or something like that. But it's a big deal to them. And so, but being able to model those moments of like either stepping back, stepping out of the room for a moment, or stepping back, you're still watching whatever's happening that you're frustrated with or angry about, but able to take a deep breath, maybe a few deep breaths, and calm yourself will allow you to be much less reactive and more thoughtful in your response to helping to manage whatever is happening in front of you. Mm-hmm. And your children are taking that in. As Herman had said earlier, they're observing everything, even if they aren't conscious of it, and modeling that type of behavior to help them also, not only yourself regulate your own emotions, but also to help them, I think, is a beautiful thing.
Right. Mm-hmm. And you can empathize with them. And just because you're empathizing with their emotions doesn't mean you're validating them. I think you can do one without the other. Like, you can have compassion towards your kids and what's making them so upset. But that doesn't mean like your emotions may all be real and like your reality, but they're not always telling the whole truth. And I think your kids are much more likely to hear the truth after you've shown a little empathy and compassion for how irrationally upset they may be. And then after you've done that, then you can, maybe speak truth over the situation.
Yeah.
Before we come to a close, I just want to touch on one last issue, which has to do, we're talking about controlling ourselves, our emotions, building community, all of these things that involve also other people, the kids and the community. But sometimes, for some people, the closest community individual is their partners, their spouses. So I would like to briefly touch on that as to, Jordan, in your experience, how do you talk about men and women at the beginning of this conversation, how sometimes we don't see things the same way. Could you talk a little bit about how you handle those things with your spouse?
Yeah.
And if he helps, it helps you regulate or step out of a particular situation, frustrating situation, and how that works for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've been very blessed with an amazingly hands-on and helpful husband, which I'm fully aware that not everybody is in a marriage where, they have a spouse who contributes in a real hands-on way with the kids. But, I do think it goes back to communication and not assuming expectations and, knowing each other's strengths and weaknesses and being able to talk through those. So, I think everybody kind of has their lanes that they are in. And, we very much play to our strengths as parents, but we don't like discipline to all fall on one person. One person can't always be the bad cop. And just kind of sharing the burden and, knowing that I have someone there when I'm falling short.
I had written down in my notes, it was back at the beginning of our conversation today, you were talking about not assuming that your partner knows what your needs are or what your day is going to look like. But so I wrote down having honest conversations, and that is sometimes not easy. But I think having those open and honest conversations and an open line of communication with your partner or whomever is helping you with your child care is so invaluable because it helps to set expectations. No one is making any assumptions, and you're practicing being really true to yourself, what your needs are, what you're good at, what you need help with, and what you need help with in any given day. And that might change. We get in these routines, but like you said this morning, you needed to be out of the house. Maybe that doesn't happen every day, but being able to have those open and honest lines of communication and being able to express what your needs are and to listen to the other person in the relationship not only will help you be a well-formed unit in your family, but it's also modeling behavior for your children to witness.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you both. This conversation, I know I took away a lot of new things to just be more aware of, I think, and that we can all benefit from really in any of our relationships too, not just caring for our children, but hopefully folks are walking away with a better awareness that parents' well-being is just as important as meeting our child's needs. So any last thoughts that anyone would like to share for the day?
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, find small things
you.
that bring you joy and be present in those moments. They can refill your cup in very small ways.
Yes.
Amen.
Well, thank you both, Valerie, Jordan, for being with us, and we look forward to further conversations. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
We hope you're walking away with fresh ideas and a deeper appreciation for the power of early experiences. Remember, childhood isn't just a phase, it is the foundation.
We look forward to your feedback about this episode by completing a short 2 or 3 minute evaluation. You can find the link in the podcast notes. The first 50 respondents who complete the evaluation will receive a $20 gift card. We want to thank our sound engineer, Nick Bertling, and we are your hosts, Kelsey and Herman. Join us for our next episode. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep unlocking what makes every child flourish.